You're listening to Business Stories with Ryan Arcaracci, where I speak to business professionals from all walks of life. Thanks for listening, and let's get to it. Welcome back to another episode of the Business Stories podcast. If you are a franchisor, consultant, broker in the franchising community, one of the biggest questions I get is about lead generation, lead portals. I hear there are good ones, there are not so good ones, and we really want to dive into on this episode, helping all of you listening understand what goes into finding good qualified leads, how much data and work it takes to do that. So my guest today is the sales director with Franchise Ventures. Mr. Travis Cook is here to talk about just that, understanding lead generation, finding good leads. How do we do it? How do we leverage all the data we have and all of the strategies to get the best leads? So, Travis, thank you for being here. Tell us a little bit about your background in franchising and a little bit about this company.
Great, Ryan. Thank you so much for having me, and I appreciate you allowing me to get in front of your audience. And
Sure.
yes, it's been a long trip for me. I never thought I would be in the franchising world, but 25 years ago, the internet kind of popped up, and lo and behold, there was a marketplace for people wanting to buy leads off the internet. So in March of 2000, I came on board, and it was maybe one or two or a handful of websites that were doing this. And, we were a fad just like all the other dot-com businesses. But
Yeah.
over the years, we've fought through all the same recessions and cycles and pandemics as everybody in the industry. So we feel like we've got a good reputation compared to most portal leads.
hmm
And I know that doesn't come with a positive stigma to it, but I feel with what we provide compared to others, we're at least raising the bar a little higher.
So let's talk about the the techniques involved and the strategies involved with how you do this, because I know you have a platform and you have all of these websites that you're generating leads from, but can you get into the intricacies of how you actually do it, how you leverage the data, and what is happening here?
Yeah, of course. Thank you. And just to clarify, the company is Franchise Ventures. Franchise Ventures is not one of those lead generating platforms. That is the company name that we've incorporated over the last 3 to 4 years. So a lot of times when I mention Franchise Ventures, people aren't necessarily familiar with that. More so, they're familiar with franchiseopportunities.com,
Yep.
franchisegator.com, franchise.com, and there's several others that we have in our portfolio. But just to put that out there, um, what we do is basically with this amount of exposure we can provide, I'm casting the largest net in the ocean of Google every single day when people are searching for franchise information. And that's where this all starts. So don't overthink this. I mean, people are going to use the internet to get information, and we're a little sliver of the entire Google traffic. But in the franchising space, I probably capture over 60% of those people searching for franchise information because I have these 8 different arms or tentacles always in that water. So that allows me, again, to capture the most traffic, usually around 700,000 unique monthly visitors combined. And we host over 600 franchise brands on a monthly basis where I'm trying to fulfill their desired budget with X amount of leads. But as these users start their search, it's every walk of life, mind you, but they must have done some sort of business, entrepreneur, franchise related search to find one of my sites. And there, once they enter, no matter which site it is, and this is done purposely, our sites are pretty much universal in how they can search by industry, investment, location. And once they see these results popping up in front of them, they can read more information about them. If they like what they read, they must voluntarily put that brand, that franchise brand, in their cart. And then when they're ready to check out, we collect their data. We have their name, email, and phone number. Obviously, the primary things there that most franchise development companies want,
hmm
along with their city, state, zip, and their available cash to invest, must meet or exceed where we have the franchise brand's minimum cash required. We email that lead real time to the franchisor. And if the franchisors are using any type of CRM, which we are huge advocates of, we will automatically import the lead into the CRM too. So, in a nutshell, that's the process.
With this process, what are you learning about from based on the data you're finding? I mean, you know, things change all the time, industries change. If we look at, a few years ago up to now, what are you seeing in terms of the types of leads, the types of interest you see? What are some interesting things that we can look at in terms of demographics right now for leads?
Great question. And 5 years ago, we developed Franchise Insights.
Hmm.
And what Franchise Insights does is it's basically surveying our database, our subscribers, our users that have visited the website and inquired for certain franchises. And we're routinely asking them questions to get their sentiment about how they feel the environment is to start up their franchise. So since we've been collecting this data and we post it on a weekly basis, and for those that would like to go down a rabbit hole of analytics, please do. You'll find all the archived material there as well as the current ones posted this week at franchiseinsights.com. Subscribe. And there again, we're constantly surveying our users to question them on their demographics, their household income, how they feel about the environment, when are they wanting to start up their business, and other news topic worthy conversations we're having with them.
So for a franchisor listening to this, especially an emerging brand, uh, how if they're going to sit down and talk to you about this,
Mm-hmm.
what is the best way to open up that discussion to make sure they get the most optimal results of this? Because I feel like a lot of brands come in ill-equipped to understand how to generate leads and what to do. And they might need some hand-holding to approach that correctly. So how do you advise that?
Yeah, of course. I think it's vital that emerging brands use platforms like ours.
Hmm.
It provides immediate validation when our audience is so accustomed to seeing these well-known brands that are advertising with us that have hundreds, if not thousands, of franchise units nationwide, and all of a sudden our audience can find something new, an
Hmm.
emerging brand sitting right next to these well-known brands. Again, it's that immediate validation of, wow, I've never heard of that. Let me see they're about
Yeah.
and get more information. Secondly, with emerging brands, they're going to pick up, well, and this applies for all brands, mind you, but even more important for emerging brands too, is we're going to help get them more recognition because what we find in our surveys is roughly 70% of these users that do fill out our forms, when they leave our site, it's natural habit at that point to go back to Google and search out that business website.
Hmm.
And they want to make sure that the validation is there and the messaging is the same. And they actually want to see if there's more information on their site that they can collect as well. So the advertisers on our site, while we don't necessarily have any way of tracing this specifically, we do know based on the surveys that we ask our users, they do tend to do this habit 70% of the time, and even 30% of those will then submit on that franchise brand's website afterwards.
Yeah.
That is a huge benefit. And again, with an emerging brand, I think it's even critical then that they also use services like yours. A CRM is going to help that one man shop become an entire team.
Right.
And sometimes with the amount of traffic we get, it's like drinking water out of a fire hose when they start getting leads.
So I want to ask you about that. When we talk about Clienteller as a CRM that can work with your leads, what are you learning based on your clients, like as far as their process? What is the best process and strategy when it comes to, of course, a tool, the messaging, the cadence, the follow-up? what have you seen historically be successful with some of the top brands you work with when it comes to honing this process in with your CRM and the lead gen? Because I think people don't realize the importance of having the two connected. It's
Mm-hmm.
getting the lead, and then it's also like reeling that fish in. How do you do that, right?
Yeah, nurturing the lead is vital. And again, this is a very top funnel approach where my leads arrive.
Yeah.
And so for these leads to truly be effective, and what they're asking for, again, don't get me wrong, all they're asking for is more information.
Right.
They're looking to buy something tomorrow.
Yeah.
And now we all want them to buy something eventually. And with the amount of
Right.
traffic we get to our site every day, I have to say this confidently that there's a buyer on my site today. But
Yeah.
what are they buying and when are they buying?
Right.
So the CRMs are vital. And in my opinion, I love your playbook that
Yeah.
I've been reviewing with many of my clients. The 21-day approach of a mixture of touches between email, text, voicemail, and most of that being automated with little nuggets of information each time about the opportunity they're asking about, along with the calendar.
Hmm.
And I believe most of the Fran Dev companies that are doing this process effectively are using that playbook and allowing automation to a degree be the calendar,
Hmm.
be the booking. And it was something interesting on one of your prior podcasts that I was listening to that sometimes we get too eager and we go into the kill shot
Yeah.
right out of the gate without any nurturing of these leads. And I feel like with the volume of leads that development teams have to go through, you can see why they are sometimes eager to get to that
Yeah.
"I now" question.
Right.
Um, Whereas, again, these people are just wanting some information to review on their own time, and I may be looking 6 to 12 months out.
Right.
So that drip campaign is essential after those initial attempts are going out in those first 21 days on your playbook. But then after that, it's not uncommon that our clients are having success when they go back 12 months in their database and re-hit those leads that they've gotten and something resurfaces at that time.
Do you feel like there's a lack of understanding what the buyer's going through? I think, they're obviously these people are spending quite a bit of time researching
Hmm.
and they're going to the franchisor site. And I think franchisors also neglect the fact that if their website is not in some ways compliant with text communications, if their website does not have the right data, if it's old, if it's outdated, that could be a huge deterrent too, because they're going to your site, they're going to the franchisor site, they might be looking at three or four or five other brands. Do you think that people fail to understand the journey, the buyer journey, what's in their head, and tailoring the content to that? Do you feel like there's a missing link there in that area?
Absolutely. I think we're all guilty of this sometimes too, Ryan. We have our blinders on.
Yeah,
All we're thinking about is me, in our process. We're not putting ourselves in their shoes.
yeah,
And let's think of it. There's no realistic franchise buyer that's laser focused on buying or researching, I should say, one franchise.
mm-hmm,
That's why directories like ours, I feel, are just hugely successful in this industry because I'm providing a one-stop shop where people can see things they've never thought about before.
yeah,
And yes, I'm going to pick three or four on average. That's our findings.
yeah,
There's a misconception that these platforms provide leads that are looking at 20 or 50 different companies. That's not the case with us.
yeah,
And so, but yes, am I looking at three or four? Absolutely. I'm going to compare you with others. And some of that comparison starts at the very beginning of the franchise development team that's contacting me.
mm-hmm,
If I feel like I'm not getting treated the way I wanted to be treated, X that one out
yeah,
and move on to the next one.
right,
But yeah, our startup sentiment index indicates all that too. And I think that's where a lot of franchisors can learn a lot about the background and demographics of our particular subscribers and treat them a little bit more respectfully than just another quote portal lead.
I want to ask you too, because I work with brokers and consultants, and a lot of them
Hmm.
take the approach of, well, I want to start looking into LinkedIn. I want to look at people that are in a job transition or considering moving out of corporate life or job life and owning a business.
Hmm.
And I want to ask your opinion, Travis, on that approach compared to how you guys do things, because yeah, it seems like it's the cheaper approach is to just get into LinkedIn and start to look for leads there, but that can also be frustrating and extremely time consuming. And also you're working with people that may or may not seriously be interested in owning a business. They might just be looking for another job or
Correct.
another opportunity, right? So what is your advice to people in the broker consultant world who are taking this approach compared to investing in tools like yours or systems like yours that can provide more qualified leads?
Mhm.
I'm curious what your thoughts are there.
Yes, we do work with a limited number of consultants on our websites. The vast majority of our clients are directly the franchisors, but we do allow for a limited selection of consultants. We like to think the proven consultants are the ones that will be best on my platform because of just what we spoke about earlier. If my users were laser focused on one franchise, well, they won't visit my platform. They'll go directly to that franchisor's website and
Right.
submit. But because my average user is looking at three or four businesses, isn't that an ideal fit for a consultant to help them?
Right.
I mean, I think these platforms are perfect for consultants. It's just a matter of if the consultant is proven and they've done it for years and they know how to have that conversation
Hmm.
and pivot that conversation to introduce brands perhaps that the person's never thought of before. And
Yeah.
I think our users appreciate that help as well because they don't know what they don't know
Right.
90% of the time. And when I am working with consultants and I get their feedback on the placements that they've made with us, it is exactly that ratio. 9 out of 10 times, they never were placed with the franchise they originated on.
Hmm.
And again, the other platforms, sure, I realize too, I'm just a small piece of the advertising mix that a friend dev team uses as well as a consultant. LinkedIn's a good source, but it's becoming costly and it's becoming saturated too.
Yeah.
And to be quite frank, we dominate the space so much, not only just on search, but also social media, Meta, Facebook, YouTube. It's hard to play in my sandbox or compete in my sandbox because I I'm going to outspend you.
Yeah.
I'm going to outperform you and I'm going to scoot you off the first page of whatever results you're trying to get on.
Hmm. Hmm.
So we've had the same challenges as everyone else has had, especially since the pandemic.
Yeah.
I mean, that was a major hurdle for everyone to get over. And then, lo and behold, AI.
Yep.
You can't be scared of it. You've got to adapt or die. And
Hmm.
we adapt daily. And we have to. Not to say that we're not going to make mistakes. We do, and we correct them. And that's because we get good feedback from our clients,
Yeah.
uh, positive and negative.
Can you share some? I mean, you've been doing this for quite some time, 25 years. Congratulations on your 25th
Oh, thank
anniversary.
you. Thank
Can you share some particular stories with brands that stand out to you that you feel really provide an example of how to do this correctly? Is there anything that sticks out in your head, Travis?
Well, with the number of clients that we have posted on a very limited term, flexible contract,
Yeah.
that remain on our site month in and month out, I think that in of itself speaks volumes to we are doing something different than maybe some of what the other portals do. Uh, but there obviously are some brand names out there that I work with closely and have continuously for over a decade that are getting results from us that have processes in place with CRMs, or internally they've just developed their own processes too that work best for them.
Hmm.
Um, Neighborly comes to mind. It's one of my top clients, 17 brands on the websites. They're not just out there using any one particular source or any source they get calls from. And I've been fortunate enough to provide them with good data, good customer service,
Hmm.
and ultimately they get results
Yeah.
from us. Otherwise, they would not isolate such in my opinion, a good sized chunk of their budget towards our lead generation. Um, but in general, I mean, I could go on with success stories about clients reporting deals from us, from the emerging brand that found their first franchise with us to the existing franchise that has isolated pockets only available, finding those too, because it's small pockets of the world that are using the internet too.
Yeah. Yeah. As we kind of wrap this up, can you give us an idea of how you, once you get a brand or a consultant on board, what do you provide them? How do you kind of handle that experience for them in terms of data, what you provide? What can they expect
Mhm.
from you, I guess is the question.
Sure. We try our best too to make sure we're validating the brands that come on board with us, whether that's a franchise brand or a franchise consultant. And
Yeah.
specifically with the franchise brand, while we don't post it for public consumption, we do like to review an FDD.
Hmm.
We do like to ask what their processes are. If they're going to give up on me out of their first 10 to 30 leads and say it doesn't work, well, then I've wasted my time and theirs.
Yeah.
So we do a good job of validating who's coming on board with us to make sure they have the systems in place. Like I said earlier, we encourage them all to have a CRM. No matter what it is, we'll import it to their CRM. So that's one less thing they have to do.
Yeah.
Um, and we touched on this earlier too. We visit their website. We don't do website design, but we'll provide some constructive criticism. And
Hmm.
you'll be shocked at how many times the franchise section is not there at the very top, just
Yeah.
an alarm bell to say, click on me.
Yeah.
And then you go to the franchise page and it's a request form.
Yep.
So those are topics that we'll have in advance of anyone getting on board. But once we've validated the process and cleared all those hurdles, it's a very quick turnaround for my team. And my team, I have to say that importantly, I am dedicated. I am blessed to have a team surrounding me that's just as loyal to this company as I am, because no one has less than a decade of tenure with us. And
Wow.
we're not a large team, but we're a proud team and we'll always do what's best for our clients. And so you're up and not running on our website typically within 3 or 4 business days of executing a DocuSign.
Wow. Okay. Okay. So as we kind of wrap this up, what do you think an emerging brand before they just dive in and go, "Hey, I want to start getting leads tomorrow and I'm excited," and they're all excited and they want to start growing, but what are some things they should just make sure, like just sit down and look at here are some things you should really be thinking about before we have a conversation to make sure this is going to be a successful campaign or a successful process for you. We talked about CRM, we have Client Tether and there's others out
Mhm.
there.
Mhm.
We talked about the website, but what are some checklist items to say, look, this is really essential to make this successful? What would those things be?
Which is the process.
Yeah.
I mean, that's pretty much what a franchise is programmed to do
Yeah.
when they get a franchisee on board is have a process. Well, the process starts with lead generation. How are you going to process these leads?
Yeah.
And if you don't have those processes in place, I tell them to wait and then call me back when they do,
Hmm.
along with making sure they have the capital to withstand the first 6 to 9 months where they are spending money and nothing is closing quite yet. And
Yeah.
too many times people think they have the best model since sliced bread, that it shouldn't take more than 30 leads to get a deal closed. In reality, it takes a lot more than that.
Yeah.
And you can quickly get behind on your leads and then run into that situation where you're panicking from a financial perspective as well as from a strategy perspective and go for those kill shots early, which is nothing in this day and age of information gathering. It's just going to turn people off.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't mind also validating their processes. If they say, Travis, we have this process in place, well, act like I'm a lead, put me in your system. I'd love to see your drips. I'd love to see how you handle a lead as it comes in and give you my 2 cents worth on it.
Yeah. When you're doing that, I mean, what are some of the red flags you see? Do you see any red flags in processes? I mean, I think people think they have a process, but maybe their process is not as optimized as it could be. So, what do you often see is are the gaps or the problems there, if any?
Uh, Specifically with the emerging brands, they most of the time don't have the dedicated team set
Hmm.
aside for this process.
Yeah.
Um, Again, that's where I would advocate client tether
Yeah.
or CRM to help that one person shop become a 10-person shop just with the help of technology.
Right.
Uh, but I believe that in this day and age, with most businesses that are becoming franchise businesses, what they've gone through to get to this phase of getting their company scalable, profitable,
Yep.
drawing revenue, getting their FDD completed. They've already spent close to 100 to 150,000 there, probably on at minimum.
Right.
So don't start pinching pennies when it comes to growing the business with your lead generation sources.
Right.
You've got to spend the money to make the money. And I think we all know by now, with most of the conferences we attend, it's anywhere between, on a low end, probably 14,000 to possibly even 20,000 per acquisition with
Hmm.
your lead sources. That's not my average. That's the industry telling us that's what their average is. So
Right.
if you can't wrap your head around that number, then don't start buying leads until
Yeah.
your capital is there to absorb that.
Right. That's good to know. So you said you wanted to provide a little bit of an offer to some
Oh,
people
oh,
listening, and I'm glad I didn't forget because I know you brought that up
well,
early
thank
on.
you. Thank you.
Um,
I appreciate again this time, this
yeah,
ability to kind of sit behind this side of the microphone and reach a lot of people that you reach. But yes, if anyone wants to reach out to me directly and reference this podcast, we will have a special promotion for those running.
great. I look forward to it. Um, and Travis, too, how can people reach you if they want to learn more or just have questions? I know you have your website, you have Franchise Insights, but if they want to get in contact with you just to have an open discussion, um, how can they reach you?
Yeah, of course. Thank you. They can always visit franchiseventures.com. That's again our parent site, and there's more information there, including our media kit, including our staff, as well as you can reach me directly, Travis period Cook at franchiseventures.com. I use my cell phone. My personal cell phone is my business lifeline as well. So 404-663-1890. I'll be happy to talk to you more about this conversation and any questions you have.
All right, thank you, Travis. I'm going to go ahead and post the links to the websites Travis mentioned on the description. So please check those out. Reach out to Travis if you have questions. If you're a brand, a consultant, definitely go to these websites, reach out to Travis. So thank you, Travis. It's been good to have you on, and I look forward to continuing the conversation in the future.
Thank you so much, Ryan. Have a great day.
You too. Hey, this is Ryan with the Business Stories Podcast. And if you're a franchisor, franchise consultant, broker, or just a small business owner, you've got to check out clienttether.com. It's an amazing sales automation tool that is revolutionizing the industry. If you want to learn more, go to clienttether.com and inquire within.